So Francis, that meeting in Mombasa, what happened there?
Wow. Direct and to the point. Okay.
I know you.
Yes,
I see what you
I know where I'm coming from.
I see what you just did there. We also the meeting like everybody else saw it on TV.
Except we didn't use some.
But what is important is to make sense of the optics that we saw. That being, initially, this very same place we've said that President Uhuru Kenyatta is seemingly organizing, trying to influence who will be his successor, and definitely his deputy is not one of them. And you saw the parade of all the other leaders who are contesting, except largely his deputy. So tells you where he thinks his successor is coming from, at least from that team. But there's a bigger problem therein, like there would be in any way. One, if you have 6 people who have said they are interested in the presidency, the first contest is to make them agree on who among them can be the presidential candidate, because all 6 can be president at the same time. So one of them will have to be supported by the others. And there is also a possibility of agreeing or disagreeing. If there's a disagreement, then there's a fallout, and that fallout will necessitate one of the contestants and other contestants going their separate ways. So that is the first major hurdle, getting them to agree on who the presidential candidate is. Well, the feelers we get from that meeting are that the president seemingly supports an idea of Raila Odinga as the presidential candidate. But will the other NASA former NASA colleagues agree to support him? And they claim that they supported him in 2013 and in 2017. So they say it is now his time to reciprocate. In Banana they say return the hand, kurudisha mkono. But there are other factors like age, experience, networks and everything else. So it will
someone told me money as well.
And money as well. So it will still ultimately boil down to some factors that we have always pointed out. For you to be a successful presidential candidate, what do you require? You require numbers, people. You require networks, local and international. You require resources. Simple and pure. So if you don't have those 3, or at least 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, then it means you are in some sort of a trouble.
Joe, Gashuri makes a good point. Unaleta nini? What are you bringing to the table? Yeah. In fact, when they had that meeting in Mombasa, each one of them should have looked at themselves individually and see, what am I bringing? It was interesting that Kalonzo Musyoka went there a day after he had launched his presidential campaign secretariat. Maybe to raise his stakes in such a coalition. As you said, the main thing when you have any of these coalitions is who is going to end up being the flag bearer. Umesema networks ni muhimu. I was just remember that yesterday ODM leader Raila Odinga met ambassadors and heads of missions, I think from the UK, European Union, the UN and the US, to discuss programs for Kenya. Okay, the international community is important, but I was just asking myself, okay, Raila Odinga was meeting them as who in government, yeah? But anyway, that's a story for another day. But those networks are very important, as you've spoken about, but optics also. So there you have the experience. You're saying kuna Raila pale, Kalonzo there, Mudavadi there, Mutangula there, Gideon Moi there. And probably maybe they represent various parts of this country. Again, what is each one bringing to the table? But maybe there are those who would say right now Uhuru Kenyatta should not support any particular candidate. Maybe he should be an arbitrator ambaye anakaa katikati, just to ensure that we have peaceful polls come 2022. As we've said, the stakes are different this time. We don't have an incumbent. We don't have maybe a particular leader from Central Kenya, although you'll tell us more about caucus imekuja leo. But there are all those factors that would look. And I'm trying to think about what the Deputy President was saying when he saw that. I think we have a soundbite.
We have it. We have it, because I wanted us to go to that,
on the Mombasa meeting. Maybe we can listen to that.
Hawa watu wanaume 4 5, ya sijui 6, wameenda pale ati wanaenda kupanga. Huyo rais ambaye wamemtembelea hawajawahi kumpigia kura hata siku moja. Hawajawahi kumtafutia kura hata siku moja. hawajaenda pale kumsaidia atimize ile agenda alikuwa naye ya Wakenya milioni 45. Wameenda pale agenda ya kibinafsi ya kugawana vyeo na mamlaka. Ati wapigane na sisi, watumie ofisi sisi tumemsaidia rais apate, ili wapige sisi tuliomfanyia campaign na kumchagua yule rais. Kwani wanaona hakuna Mungu mbinguni? Si hawa watu tutawaachia Mungu? Ama?
Interesting sentiments there by the Deputy President, but we need to agree that most of our leaders, almost all of them, are in this to get those positions of power. Wote wameonja power, wengi wao wako nje wanataka kuirudia. Sometimes I question their...
That's what the contest is about.
It's about. But anyway, that's what happened in Mombasa, I think.
I wanted Linus to come in a little bit on this one. The Deputy President taking cue there, because obviously this constellation that we saw there, from everything that we are hearing, it is meant to come up with the counter sort of arrangement, because we know where the DP is. It is almost clear that he is the presidential flag bearer when that time comes. But on this other side, things are not as clear, and I'm being modest when I say that.
That's right, Joe. And what the current events remind me of is the relationship between former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo and his deputy Atiku Abubakar. They were a pair, president and vice president, from 1999, I think, to 2007. And when he was leaving office, President Obasanjo really turned the heat on his deputy, his vice president, saying that this is not the man that will succeed me as president. We're seeing a similar scenario playing out here, because there's something very similar between the two arrangements. President Obasanjo could also not fire Atiku Abubakar. And then Atiku Abubakar, for the very same reasons William Ruto is not resigning as deputy president, hang on to the office till the last minute, because there's always a duality of a risk there. One is the loss of immunity, so you know you can be mishandled, and you know there are a lot of people out there who can do that, and two, basically loss of access and leverage to the kind of political space that both Atiku and William Ruto enjoy as deputy presidents. So that's the scenario we have here. But there's one fact that is really clear. Uhuru Kenyatta, just like Obasanjo, is saying, not my deputy, anybody but my deputy. What did Obasanjo do that Uhuru is not doing? Obasanjo went to the regions and picked a governor of Katsina. Umaru Yaradua. And picked him and made him the
and he had great credentials. Actually was reputed as one of the governors who had not been caught up in any corruption scandal, because I mean in Nigeria it's very unusual actually to find a governor who's not been mentioned in this, and he stood out in that way.
Yes, and so he comes in and becomes the candidate for PDP and wins the presidency. There's something again
actually
that
covered that election. Just
yes.
2007.
That's for Jamila and
yes.
And Francis, yes.
Then there is then there is of course the scenario that is not possible here. President Uhuru Kenyatta is not looking within Jubilee the way President Obasanjo looked within PDP for a successor. He is having to walk out. What could be the motivation for that? I think he's looking at the history of this country. And the history of this country in the last few elections is, you can tell who's got the weight to be president. You know, we can't sit here and wait for a candidate who has just arrived in the scene with all these nice credentials, corruption-free, and say that we can hope that they can become president of Kenya. Because we are not that kind of a political environment. For us, the electorate builds trust over time. And what this means is the president is not finding that kind of political weight within Jubilee to counter his deputy. His deputy is a clear runaway, strong person within that party, and in any case is on his way out to UDA. So, and I think it's just back to, again, the way we have poor political structures. So we have to look at coalitions because we don't really have a strong Jubilee party or a strong this and that party. What we need is a strong candidate, and then a coalition is cobbled together. It can die after the election, but the purpose is go for these elections. And I think it's increasingly, from the reports we are all seeing, it's increasingly clear that the president's choice for successor is Raila Odinga.
Interesting. Yvonne, you need to have the last word on this because I want us to move to the politics of the mountain.
of France. The mountain.
Moving the mountain.
Yes, the central question on the mountain.
Yes, and maybe I can talk about that and allude a little bit to what was the 3 MKs meeting today from Mount Kenya. But for me, what was interesting about what happened in Mombasa is that was it a week or 2 ago, we saw at least 4 out of the 5 there announcing in a very big way that they were divorced. So these are 2 sets of divorcees who are then meeting now, President Uhuru Kenyatta. It doesn't get any more redundant, shall I say, or recycled, so to speak. So these people leaving NASA in such dramatic fashion, we have been betrayed, there was no trust. As if they're going to a totally other country. See you, goodbye, NASA is dead, it's finished, we're now in the One Kenya Alliance. And then what happens? We see them together now with this spouse that they divorced, now again, meeting President Uhuru Kenyatta, and remember they
crafting a new relationship.
Anyway, couples who've divorced have been known to remarry, so I'm just not sure if that has happened in such a short span of time. But then again, everything and anything is possible with this, as we saw in the run-up to 2013, which we talked about here a couple of weeks ago. But that was just, it was a little, tired to see. And then, we've got KANU that, was not, of course, part of the NASA shenanigans and sort of stood aside. That is in itself in a post-election coalition agreement with Jubilee Party. And then now they're all there. And, we're told that they discussed COVID-19. Yeah.
The template that is being used, I would think, is the 2002 template, the NAC template of 2002, where you had various players from various regions who will declare their presidential ambitions, and then ultimately they will concretize at one place, and then one of them will be told, Joe Tosha. And of course with certain promises, an MOU here and another MOU there, but there is the question of trust, number one, and the question of sharing government before and after. So those are the negotiations that probably would come into it, and maybe trying to learn from the past mistakes. If you felt this is where you were betrayed, you will try and push a little bit more in terms of making sure that the MOU is tighter so that you're not betrayed in future. But isn't betrayal a currency of our politics? Yeah. So I would think the kind of a scenario that we see here is similar to the 2002 scenario. Whether it will work now like it did in 2002 or it won't remains the ultimate question.
Yet the ultimate question also is in what will happen in President Uhuru Kenyatta's backyard. Today I had an interesting argument coming from Moses Kuria during that meeting that Yvonne was alluding to, and he made an interesting statement about that Mombasa thing, that the president really can't be said to represent Mount Kenya, and so we weren't represented there, so we have to also retreat and figure out what we are doing. But more interestingly for me is what implications this then has on the relationship that this at least Moses Kuria in this particular instance and Mwangi Kiunjuri, the relationship that they've had with the deputy president, because it seems to me from speaking to people around those circles that the experience of 2017, where all of these parties were folded and then they had this behemoth in the name of Jubilee, is still fresh in people's minds. People folded their parties, and then once you get in there, then the leverage is not that much. So they're going into an election, and you have, all these people, Moses Kuria, now there is Martha Karua, and Mwangi Kiunjuri saying, yeah, we are happy to have conversations, but let's have those conversations from our own parties, from where we sit, so that you actually have leverage. You can have a voice around the table, because you have not been, and Linus will remember this terminology, you have not been swallowed by the bigger or seemingly bigger party here. So we are seeing almost nationalistic sentiments, nation here being the Kikuyu, coming from these people that, we may not have a presidential candidate, but we want to have this in our own terms. Linus, you have looked at these kinds of issues for many years. Is this a familiar pattern, or are we seeing something totally new coming from the region?
The only new thing that will come from the region is the awkward situation they find themselves in for the first time since 1992. And that is, a president is exiting without a clear regional sort of kingpin. And so that is a contested space. But I want us to listen to Karua and Kiunjuri and Kuria. I think they're in quick succession, those sound bites. They spoke earlier today, and I think it's quite telling what we heard from them today.
So this is a forum not to define tomorrow's coalition. It could very well end up being that, but it is a forum for unity of purpose on issues affecting our region and affecting the nation. This initiative, in the next 3 months, will culminate in the Limuru 3 conference.
You cannot go and find unity just there, somewhere there. You start unifying. That is what we have done today. In the morning, I was around TSP. Mother Karua was Nakenya, and Moses Kuria was Chama Chakazi. Right now, we are 3. And we have said we are allocating ourselves duties, approach other people.
As to whether we are going to work with certain leaders, this is a discussion that is neither here nor there. What we are saying, our primary mission here is to look at the interest of our region first of all, because every leader comes from a particular region.
I think we've put it here before in this show that the Mount Kenya region is very regimental in how they do their politics. What we are starting to hear is the kind of conversation that may lead to a very structured approach to the 2022 election. I think nobody should be mislead themselves about how the region will go in terms of how it votes. The impression that it's going to be this brawl where anybody can benefit is actually misleading. That's not how they do their politics, and we've explained it variously here. Reference to Limuru 3. I think for me that's the takeout for on this. Limuru 3 takes the politics back to the pyramid that we know has always directed politics in Mount Kenya region, which is consultative. It's about the leaders at the top. It's about the business persons, people of influence, and then the messaging is passed on down the line. We have 11 months and about 25 days to go to the next election. For Central Kenya, it's very early for anybody to make conclusions. But I would watch Limuru 3 more than I would watch Kiambaba elections.
Yeah. And Francis, I think a soundbite which we haven't played, but which I listened to a little bit earlier, is where Kiunjuri basically saying that if other people are not interested in coalitions, that's their own thing, but we are kind of interested in what really matters, or I'm paraphrasing here, but almost in reference to what is now being perceived as the DP not being very enthusiastic about coalitions. I think he said as much in a recent interview where he was saying,
Hustler Nation troops
yeah, tuko sawa, we really don't need a coalition.
Absolutely, and I think that was in reference to that specific soundbite. When Inoro FM, Breakfast Team, did an interview with the Deputy President, Nyox asked him a specific question, whether he's willing to form coalitions. And he said he is forming coalitions with the people, you know, Mama Mboga, Msewa Boda Boda, the voters, the direct voters. And that is probably not the kind of coalitions that we know in our normal political discussion. The coalitions that are probably well known is this region and this region, this party and this party. Those are the coalitions that many people probably know. This coalition that the Deputy President talks about, direct with the people, is what probably could be problematic for some political quarters who would want a different kind of setup. A different setup that comes at a political party, political leaders, regional level. And it's probably a departure from what we know. And what you looked at in Mombasa is very different from what the Deputy President was talking about in that interview. So you have two divergent models of creating coalitions, so to say. The Deputy President says he's approaching it from the people, bottom. You know,
bottom
the
up.
People at the bottom of the pyramid. On the other hand, there are political leaders who are looking at it from that elevated point of view, the regional point of view, the political party's point of view. And I think that is the reference that Mwangi Kiunjuri was referring to. But ultimately, remember, while it would be ideal that people will vote on basis of policies, let's say economy, like the kind of a discussion that we see now, what is the reality? The reality may be a little different on what particularly drives people to vote in one way or another. Who are the drivers of the voting patterns in our country? Look at 2017, 2013. When the voter registration was closed, you had discussions around how the voting was likely to be based on how one region or another region had registered in terms of
numbers.
The numbers in terms of the registered voters. And the numbers are not far from what was projected. Tells you something. So lock regions, lock them, and then negotiate coalitions. And so when you hear Limuru 1, Limuru 2, Limuru 3, sounds very familiar. And because I've covered at least 2 Limurus, I would even have an idea how that statement is read.
Yvonne, were you going to say something? You know, initially you referred to the 3 MKs.
I did, yeah. That's right. And, you know, Mount Kenya leaders.
Mount Kenya is also MK.
Right, yes. There we go. But for me, I think the interesting thing is the movement we've seen in the last maybe 7 to 14 days is just a sign of what's to come over the next 11 months and how things are still very early. So you have Martha Karua, I mean, unlikely, party leaders, by the way, Martha Karua, Mwangi Kiunjuri and Moses Kuria meeting today. You had a meeting between Martha Karua and the Speaker of the National Assembly, J.B. Muturi, and a tweet that was done by his communication team essentially saying that she had endorsed him and his bid for the presidency. Then you have President Uhuru Kenyatta meeting, the other NASA stroke One Kenya Alliance. And then you have Kiraitu meeting Raila and Orengo. I mean, take a look at all of these things.
Today, and then Raila meeting groups of business people every so often.
Absolutely.
Today he was
look at all of he was in Embu today.
And I think that could be our last soundbite.
Yeah. Orengo and Peter Kenneth?
And Peter Kenneth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raila Amolo Odinga ameshikana mikono na ndugu yake, si kutakia makubwa. In fact, what has happened in Kenya is so unique, where you have 2 statesmen, one in government and one in opposition, wakiungana pamoja kupatia Kenya nafasi tulete kazi ya maendeleo.
And we need
to be extremely careful. We need to be selfish as to where our interests lie. We need to be selfish. Elections are about competition, not about enmity. So whatever could have happened in previous elections was competition. It was never enmity.
And so, like I said, if you think these movements we've seen over the last 2 or so weeks are dizzying, we haven't seen anything yet. What we can be sure of, same faces, same politicians, each of them upping their stakes. Mwangi Kiunjuri with his TSP party, Moses Kuria, who's been with PEP, but then now today started talking about Chama cha Kazi party. Kiraitu Murungi also, reviving, or rumored to be reviving, the bus party, because right now everybody is looking at who has a party, who has which numbers, and who will then be able to use that to leverage to their position. So much movement that we have seen, and so much more to come. But like we've all said, I think around this table, Limuru 3 will be interesting. I mean, but just take a look at what we've seen now. What's it likely to be over the next weeks, if not months?
Two things, Joe. Safety, influence. If you saw the discussion today by the 3 MKs, as Yvonne calls them, discussing another MK, the Mount Kenya region, you're talking about 2 things: safety and influence. Safety in the sense that get your own seat, get your own party that will deliver you a ticket, because of what you saw in 2017, the Jubilee nominations. Number 2, influence. Pre and post-election, have your party field candidates, get a number of parliamentary seats, because in parliament next season it will be coalitions. And because parliament has a key role to play in governance, if you have 5 MPs or 3 or 7 or 10, you have a seat at the negotiating table.
Linus has half a point before we finish this.
Yeah, and the half a point is I'm not sure parties matter that much. I think it'll be individuals. Where is individual A, individual B standing? Because parties are just like these face masks. It doesn't matter which color you're wearing. It's going to do the purpose. And what we need to follow is how these particular leaders, specific leaders, are moving. And one of the things that really comes out through today in that little presser by the 3 MKs, look at the tone. And these are relatively more senior politicians from the region, and we've never seen them together. Yep. So that is something quite telling that we need to observe in the coming days. Some arguments have been made also about President Kenyatta proposing Raila Odinga as the candidate, and arguments could be made about 2002. In 2002, the outgoing president did pick Uhuru Kenyatta as the project, as the next president. But here is the difference. What was Uhuru Kenyatta in 2000 coming with to the presidential race? He was coming with a defeat in the Gatundu South by-election by Moses Muhia in 1997. So he was an unnominated MP. He was a complete greenhorn. He had just joined government from the Kenya Tourism Board as chairman, and then nominated to parliament after Mark Too vacated his seat. So that he's made minister for local authorities, local government. And then basically a quick oven kind of processing for the presidential race. But Raila Odinga, 4 elections as presidential candidate, 4 elections, 97, I think, 2007, 13 and 17. Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. So we need to finish this, take it home, as Jamila says, and it is Jamila that we start with, actually, the memo. Take it away.